Welcome to our second session today of day 2. I'm excited to, in a moment, you'll see pinned and spotlit all of our panelists for today. Thank you for Kayla from GO-MAP with that background support. I'm Patricia in the Office of Equity and Justice in Grad Programs. Some of you have been with us today already, and I'm excited to welcome you to this session on graduate student holistic support, community building, and belonging. And before I introduce briefly our panelists and session, I'm going to ground us with a brief land acknowledgement. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral homelands of those who were here before and those who are still here. The University of Washington and all of our institutions exist on Indigenous land, wherever you're zooming in from today. So in our time together, we want to keep in mind the integrity of this territory where area Native peoples identify as the Duwamish, Suquamish, Snoqualmie, and Puyallup, as well as the tribes of the Muckleshoot, Tulalip, and other Coast Salish peoples and their descendants. We're grateful to live and work on these lands and to follow the leadership of our community members who are Native and Indigenous, particularly those who are from these territories. So this land acknowledgement is just one small act in the ongoing process of working to be in good relationship with the land and the people of the land. And I want to welcome all of our fabulous panelists today. We will have this session moderated by Ralina Joseph, Associate Dean of Equity and Justice in Graduate Programs and Professor of Communication. Our panelists are Interim Director of GO-MAP, Dr. Carolyn Jackson, Assistant Director of Core Programs, Jaye Sablan, and the UW Seattle campus communication grad students who facilitate the CCDE/GO-MAP's Real Talk Tuesdays program. We've got Laura Irwin, Jazz Moultrie, and Lando Tosaya. Please do correct me when you speak if I mispronounced your names. So with that, I will pass it over to Associate Dean Ralina Joseph, and just remind everyone that this session is being recorded as a resource for faculty and staff.
Thank you, and we're so excited to have all of you here. And in our last session, Christina was talking about how we are in this wonderful position where we're having record numbers of BIPOC graduate students who are entering into our university. And of course, we don't want students to just be accepted or to just come into our programs. We want y'all to stay, to be successful, to graduate, and to go on to the careers that you want the most. We want, in short, for you all to have a sense of belonging here. And I know that you all are all here representing different groups. And I'm hoping that maybe, Jaye, you could start us off and talk a little bit about core programs and your role in core programs and what you all do in terms of fostering this really important sense of belonging for our graduate students.
Great. And to be respectful to my co-panelists here, I'll try to keep it in time. Hi, everybody. Many of you may have, I've been in contact with you via email or met you at different professional events on across the UW in support of graduate students. My name is Jaye Sablan.
Your sound dipped for just a second there, Jaye.
Oh, I unmuted myself. I heard it on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay, okay, great. So yeah, I'm honored to be here today with my esteemed panelists. And Core Programs is the Office of Graduate Student Affairs in the Graduate School. And we design as well as co-develop a variety of events and programming with different university partners that center on the theme of wellness, professional development, community building, and leadership resources, events, and opportunities to support the success of UW graduate students. And in this work, I want to just quickly acknowledge my colleague, Bill Mahoney, whom I collaborate with closely. as well as my colleague Zian Bai, who recently left her role as our graduate staff assistant for core programs. She recently graduated with her PhD in education. And to respond to your question, Ralina, to encourage graduate students to connect and build community, I'll just highlight a few concrete and recent examples of this that comes out of my office in collaboration with other units. And first, during this past summer, just a few months after the pandemic started and during the uprisings against anti-Black racism and white supremacy, I collaborated with the Office of Equity and Justice in grad programs to co-facilitate mindfulness practice sessions that ran for 4 consecutive weeks. This session included first gen and GO-MAP graduate students, as well as grad students who were part of their departmental diversity committees. And this allowed an opportunity for students to be in community and utilize mindfulness and yoga techniques to cope with stressors related to the pandemic and stressors related to experiences with oppression like racism, sexism, and so forth. Because mental health and wellness are social justice issues. A couple of weeks ago, in collaboration with GO-MAP and the Counseling Center, we co-hosted a workshop for first-gen BIPOC and all graduate students to share strategies for coping with imposter syndrome. And feedback from students included statements like, they started to feel less alone in their experiences with imposter syndrome, and it's actually helpful for them to know that all graduate students experience this throughout their graduate trajectories. 2 initiatives that have come out of my office are one to support first-gen graduate students and then also to support international graduate students. We have advisory boards for both of those initiatives. The reason why we have advisory boards is because we feel that it's very valuable to take cue from the leadership and insights of our underrepresented students at the UW. And so they give us feedback about planning different events and social gatherings, especially during this time when everything is virtual. Those are other initiatives that we have. And with that, I will pass it over to my colleagues.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. And actually, we were just talking about Be Real, the director of the Resilience Lab, Megan Kennedy, came to our Interrupting Privilege research group meeting where these students, who are all, I should say, purposes of full disclosure, all my advisees as well, came to our research group meeting and we're wondering, might you be leading a similar group in the future for BIPOC, first gen graduate students in particular?
Could you repeat the question?
Are you going to be leading a special Be Real group for BIPOC and first gen grad students like you did the last one?
Oh, I can. Can I collaborate with you? That would be amazing. Yeah, for sure. This is great for me to hear. Yeah. Absolutely.
Excellent. Wonderful. So we can look forward to that, to maybe even more partnerships here. Terrific. Well, maybe we could hear. We'll flip it around. We'll have our students next, and then maybe we'll round it up with Carolyn from GO-MAP here from Dr. Jackson. So Laura, Lando, Jazz, you all are first year PhD, MA, PhD, and PhD students starting graduate school in this moment, the year of our pandemic, of our dual pandemics, in different physical locations. Maybe tell us a little bit about, I don't know who wants to start first, where you're calling in from, what the year has been about. And you're going to talk about Real Talk Tuesdays, but maybe talk about the important process of like what has helped to facilitate belonging for you for this year.
I'll go because I've been thinking about this a lot. So I want to start because I know we were invited because of our experience with Real Talk Tuesday, and I would just say that like off top, it's been a wonderful experience for me, like in the sessions that I've been able to attend, because I feel like compared to all the other kind of Zoom-mediated sessions or classes I feel like there is the greatest kind of space for me to kind of be and talk freely and not feel like I am just to talk freely, I guess, right? But then I think also this year we did a parent and family and like relationship edition, because like this isn't my first time being a grad student, but this is my first time being a grad student parent. And that has been an investment, and I'm smiling because I'm still working it out. But I really appreciate it. I had not had another experience or limited experience being able to talk to other parents, other mothers, sharing their experiences, what they went through. And it was a wonderful learning experience for me. It was a wonderful, like, cathartic, just, y'all, I get it, y'all get it. They were giving me advice, and it was wonderful. And so we did another like parent-family relationship edition like in the next quarter, and we didn't have any parents there, right? And I remember feeling a little like, oh man, I was like looking forward to that conversation. And I think that kind of brings me to like the next part of this. It's like this connection, this building community, this sense of belonging. It's kind of all happening through like this simulated virtual world. And I think that has been the most kind of like the biggest challenge for me. So I'm in Killeen, Texas. I haven't moved to Seattle yet. I will be there in July or August, and I'm excited. But I think I get a lot of anxiety being in Zoom, like being in this space right now gives me anxiety. And so I know in like kind of dominant media and these conversations, we talk a lot about Zoom fatigue, but like how often do we talk about the surveillance of it all? This feeling of being watched, especially where I feel like watched in this body that I am in so many other spaces. And it makes me uncomfortable. And so like having those moments, you know, where I can be like comfortable even a little bit is wonderful. And I appreciate that. But as far as other types of building of community and belonging, like me being home with my family, like, yeah, like, and I know that not everyone has that. I know it and I understand it, and I'm hearing that from other people. And I think that is what has been sustaining me. That's what's been giving me that balance. Because when you have like this, everyone's in my house right now, right? And so it's like that like lack of separation between home and school and work. This being like a first time everything kind of thing. That's been overwhelming. And so again, I do appreciate those moments where I can like be in the space and feel comfortable. And yeah, that's what, those are the thoughts that I'm thinking through right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Jazz. I appreciate that realness because, you know, we are all, Carolyn and Jaye and myself and all of our colleagues are trying to think about all the ways in which we can create support for you all. And sometimes actually what needs to happen is just shutting the computer and getting away from all these mediated spaces, right? And so thinking about how does the support in all kinds of like wraparound ways happen for graduate students and for BIPOC graduate students who are experiencing so much right now and so much Zoom fatigue. Yeah, and the answer, even though, and we didn't even, so Real Talk Tuesdays, we're going to hear more about it, is the program that runs through GO-MAP. It's a joint program with GO-MAP and the Center for Communication, Difference and Equity, brings together BIPOC graduate students for conversations. We've had someone from counseling services that's also come in kind of every other session as well to not to provide counseling, but just to be another voice and a resource there. And all of that is wonderful. Everything Jaye is naming is wonderful. And we know that sometimes it might not be the thing. So I appreciate you naming that. Going around the screen, Lando, do you want to share next, please, and talk about maybe the larger, so Real Talk Tuesday, but also belonging, what has helped to foster belonging? And you did move here from California, so maybe talking about that process.
Right. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Lando. I moved here from Los Angeles. I moved in August, which was like, I guess, the start of the, you know, when we were all isolated. So moving here, it was really difficult because I know one person that lived in Seattle before me. So it was really scary, but through Real Talk Tuesdays, like I have a love-hate with Zoom. Like I love that I can connect with so many people. Like during Real Talk Tuesdays, we've had people from the Bothell campus come, the Tacoma campus come, and these are people that I would otherwise not even know. Or some people that if they had work, they can get away from it, but they don't have time to come to campus and actually come to these meetings. And so I love that aspect of Zoom, but on the other side, I cannot wait till delete it I'm so excited for the day that I could just delete Zoom and never have to use it again. To find a sense of belonging, it was really hard moving here and not knowing anyone. And so you kind of get that you're isolated within an isolation because we were all, you know, self-isolating. And it was nice to meet so many people. I picked where I was going to be living based on one of the Real Talk Tuesdays because I was considering moving closer to campus. And there was a woman during, I believe it was the time that we had the parent workshop, and she let me know of like the horrors of, you know, living on campus. They're like, if you're over 21, you don't want to do it. And so I was like, all right, awesome. And there is a good sense of community because there's people that come to Real Talk Tuesdays and they let us know places to eat, you know, where to hike, who to meet, where to go. And these are all things that, you know, if we were on campus, I could get that in person, but it was really nice to meet people that way. And so my sense of belonging, it's kind of a little bit like I'm still trying to feel like I belong because there's something different from being in person and being online because it's hard to feel that you belong on a campus that you've only stepped foot on maybe 3 times in the past calendar year. And I'm hoping that with Real Talk Tuesdays being in person, we'll be able to reach even more students and have more people come in and share those experiences because that was the one thing that I felt as being a first year. There's the imposter syndrome. There's the feeling of, oh, did I make a mistake of moving here and leaving everyone I know behind? And so Real Talk Tuesdays has been opening that to make me feel part of a community with other BIPOC students. So that was really amazing. And yeah, that was my experience, and I'm looking forward to more of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Lando. Yeah, I mean, that is it. It's mind-boggling. I have the privilege of seeing Lando a couple times a week, and to think that neither she nor I have stepped on campus. I have 16 years of memories. Lando has 3 times of actually having been there. It's kind of astounding. And a part of our world right now that we're dealing with, right, as we're trying to create our community. So Laura, tell us a little bit about you, where you moved here from, and what has this trying to kind of feel the sense of belonging, how has it been fostered for you in this past year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Washington, D.C., but I claim Texas because I did my undergrad there. So I've kind of lived a pretty nomadic 20 years or whatever. And so coming up to Seattle, which I'm now in Seattle, specifically the Burien area, coming up here was kind of business as usual in the way that my life has sort of played out. But it has been interesting in the sense of trying to create belonging, because there hasn't been, it's not as organic. Does that make sense? It's not as organic as it once was. Like the crossing in the hallways or the little interactions here and there, like that normally occur, just don't, right? They're as wonderful as it has been. A lot of the times that it's just been really difficult to schedule meetings to commiserate with one another via Zoom, right? So reusing Zoom over and over again just to be able to connect and to talk, which is wonderful because it's able to bring in all of these different people from all sorts of different parts of the world and of the Olympic Peninsula, but at the same time it's just reusing this same space over and over again, and not having this separation, right? Not having the separation between sometimes work and sometimes just trying to enjoy one another and get to know one another, right? So I'm excited for the opportunity to continue to do that and continue to grow together. As for the Real Talk Tuesday, I agree with what both Lando and Jazz have offered. It's been an amazing space, and I think there are times where I'm like, you know, maybe we should talk about some deeper stuff. You know, what are we going through? What are some like heavy things? You know, let's just really charge this space up. And there's been so much heaviness, and there are so many things that like weigh very heavily, and there's so many aspects of ourselves that through Zoom are being revealed in a way that like kind of like what Jazz said, that, you know, haven't been revealed before, right? Like there are images of my family and stuff like that behind me that normally aren't really accessible or available. And so I appreciate the moments in Real Talk Tuesday when we're kind of just sharing like food sources, you know, like different like food spots. We've shared like different, you know, hopes for when the pandemic ends to go out dancing, right? Like that was a really fun one. I like took several notes of and stuff like that. Different hiking spots, different ways to get outside, different ways to get ourselves like charged up by the sun. And I find those moments to just be like very empowering and very rejuvenating and very intimate, in a way that like that isn't heavy. So yeah, thank you.
And I so appreciate that, is that every conversation doesn't have to necessarily be like, and how are you really doing? Like let's get into it right now, right? That we need these moments of lightness. We need to figure out all the ways in which we can spark joy, and that's what I hear you saying. So Carolyn, come jump in here, please, and tell us a little bit about GO-MAP. So we've had like a little bit of a view into one GO-MAP program, and maybe you can give a more of a holistic view here of everything that GO-MAP is doing. We had a view of the OGs, now we had a view of Real Talk Tuesdays, but please tell us more about GO-MAP and belonging.
Sure. Thank you. One thing that, in terms of sparking hope or joy, that I want to share from this year in particular, there was Ralina and I were working on the equity-focused office hours, and we had asked for student voices about particular issues. And something that came up quite a few times was, even though if students aren't graduating yet, they will be, and they had questions about, am I going to get a job? What about my career in the pandemic time? And so we had a few alumni come back for the what we call the Power Hour, for an alumni spotlight, and they all got jobs in 2020 and interviewed during the pandemic, and got onboarded during the pandemic, and got rejected online through the pandemic. And so, but some really phenomenal stories about, and from different disciplines, about that and that process that students said that they benefited from. So that was like an example of really trying to, I mean, it was there were 3 panelists, but it was still very useful information about what was happening through the process. And it was showing people like how to be more resilient, or to how to think of things differently in terms of approaching their career path and next steps. And yes, you could find something during the pandemic, and it wasn't all related to the pandemic, the jobs that they received. So that was another really important element, and brought an element of hope, I would say. Also, we have a graduate student advisory board that is highly engaged, and actually knows, they're all in different disciplines, and they can give us more of a pulse of what students are looking for. And they're very active and passionate, and I don't know honestly how they do all that they do and staying in school. So there's a community building aspect, or committee, I should say, within GSAB, and they've had things like Finally Fridays. They've been so brilliant in terms of like movie night, and they even took asked people for a poll, like, what movie do you think we should see, and different things. And some of the selections, like I wanted to go to, like I wanted to see all of the movies, but that's not possible. It's on my list. And they had a game night. And then there was one night on a Friday when we had multiple rooms. I think that was our welcome back. I can't remember. Michelle's on the call. She's laughing a little bit. But there was one night when we all, well, thanks to this particular committee with Finally Fridays, there were multiple things going on in one evening that we invited GO-MAP students to. So we actually had a DJ room and a game room and some other things that were happening. So that generated a lot of kind of uplifting things. But also we need to absolutely acknowledge the times that we're in, right? There is a pandemic, there's a global and local and public and racial and reckoning, all kinds of things are happening. So we'll also offered various kinds of decompression spaces, which we are calling them, where students can come together to talk about whatever's on their mind. It could be something not related to what's happening in the media, but what is it called? The gloom. I don't remember when we're constantly bombarded. Doom scrolling. Yes, thank you. It doesn't have to be that. See, I'm pushing that out of my mind. But it could be things that are very exciting in their lives, or just like a microaggression or something that happened in class. And we did that during particular times. We just had one coming back to the quarter where several students attended. And then also during the election, we had a decompression space, regardless of your political affiliations. People wanted to talk about the elections and things that were happening. And then also with everything that happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we had a space that was catered for allies and Black students in particular. So there are different kinds of ways where we're trying to listen to the voices of students. We can't always deliver immediately, but trying to at least acknowledge the times that's what's happening and balancing it with some levels of hope and prosperity, but then also acknowledging that reality as what's happening now and having those decompression spaces. Is there anything I can stop and let someone else talk?
And that was wonderful, Carolyn. But part of what I hear you saying is that you have to listen to students. You have to actually meet them where they are. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and you have to be really conscious of the moment, right? And we've heard this from students who've been on our panels for this whole time, right? That listen to us, listen to what we need. We're telling you, if you ask us, we'll tell you what we need, and then actually listen to that.
Right, and one quick thing I wanted to add is we also have to acknowledge Zoom fatigue. So even with the decompression spaces, we were like, if you don't want your camera on, or if you feel better checking in through the chat, like that's okay. We would love to see you, but we understand that, or you could phone in, and we're trying to give, those kinds of options as well. And then students are telling us the amount of email that they're getting, they're just inundated. So we're trying to be very mindful of always mindful of what we put in the newsletter, but not trying to overflow the inboxes as well, because sometimes, and then another thing was that sometimes people assume that because we're in Zoom spaces, we can give short notice. But because students have so many emails, they need advance notice, because a couple times they're like, oh, there was something that happened, but I didn't get through my emails enough in time to see that, to put it on my calendar. So different things like that have been very helpful as far as students giving us feedback on events, because I noticed that a lot of different people are just like, oh, it's virtual, we don't have to give that much notice, but a lot of notice still helps during this time for planning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just because we're in this meeting moment doesn't mean that we can expect people to kind of, flip on a dime here. So I have a question for y'all. We have a lot of people here representing faculty, staff, some administrators representing a whole variety of units and different types of units. And we're talking here about some centralized programs, right, that are wonderful because they offer the support, but then they also kind of take the responsibility. They're a little bit off the hook of serving their students in these ways. So I'm wondering if anyone, and I don't know if the students could speak to this, about having these programs. Does this feel like this gives you the space of belonging that you want? Do you wish, or do you think, perhaps from hearing from other students as well, that there was more that individual departments or units were doing? Should there be more partnership between the units and our core programs, GO-MAP, the CCDE, these different types of offices? Is that question clear? And Carolyn and Jaye, y'all could jump in as well with this.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if I could just jump in real quickly.
Absolutely.
Only if one of the other graduate students doesn't have anything to share yet.
I think you got it, Jaye.
Okay. So just to build off what Ralina just shared, I think that's such a great insight, because we know that issues of inequity that are connected to not feeling a sense of belonging, especially for underrepresented students, graduate students, these are structural issues. just like imposter syndrome is a structural issue. We can work with students on an individual small group basis to say that they do belong, they are worthy, they're super brilliant, but then what happens when they go to other spaces across the university? And this is not like, you know, a personal attack of any one person or department. What I'm trying to convey is that equity and justice is all of our responsibility. And so it's like, how do we multiply these spaces where all graduate students can feel like they belong across the university tri-campus and research centers and all the different places, how big UW is so huge. So I wanted to say that, wanted to add that note really quickly, yeah.
I just wanted to follow up because Jaye, what I'm about to say is very connected to what you were saying and what I was thinking as you asked the question, Ralina. Because like when I'm thinking about like building community, it's like building a community for whom, and like us creating communities and like reflecting the way we want our world to be and the way we want it to be transformed. And I'm thinking too, it's like, okay, as I leave these spaces, like sometimes like we've been in like a Real Talk Tuesday session where there's like, I don't know, maybe 5, 7 in the beginning, but then there's been moments where it's just me, Lando, Laura, and maybe one other person, which is beautiful. That's when we have like our most intimate conversations because it's just us and it's the same people. Then I remember, especially when I first joined, I remember thinking, I'm like, who else could benefit from a space like this, and what does that look like? And so I did think about like students at other campuses, like, you know, like I think you said the tri-campus, but then also like, who else would benefit from this? There are other grad students of color. There are grad students of color at the community college, right? What are their resources, right? And so I think I've been thinking about that too.
Yeah. So I think that this is part of the question of who constitutes your community, and we're part of so many different types of communities, and our belonging is fostered through so many different spaces. And what can we do? And you are expanding outward and thinking about how can you continue to push outward, and for, you know, our units, our departments, our schools, our colleges to think about how can they continue to serve and not just think, well, you know, core program is going to do this, GO-MAP is going to do this over here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would love to, is there anything else that people wanted to add from our panel before I open it up here? Carolyn or students, before we open it up? Gitana, am I butchering your name? Garofalo is asking people to share their definitions of belonging. What do you think about? So we had that almost a little push through with community just now, which is, you know, kind of a partnered concept. But what about belonging? When you think about that, when we sent you out these questions in advance to ask you to think about belonging, what did it prompt you to think about?
And this is Hitana. So I'm a student advisor, and one of the things that I would welcome is just knowing what's present in your life when you feel a sense of belonging. It helps thinking about what kind of programming and resources, because when, you know, one person may feel belonging in one way and someone else may feel it in another way. And so if anybody's willing to share what is present in your life when you feel that sense of belonging or community, that would be so helpful.
Thank you so much, Tana, and thank you for correcting me on the pronunciation of your name. And this is something we've been saying we're going to follow up with some literature, and we can definitely follow up with some literature around. There's some wonderful literature around belonging, and in particular at Stanford, they've done a big project around Black student success and belonging. What does it mean to foster belonging? But individually, what do you all think about that?
I would love to respond to that, because recently, with everything that's been happening in the media, with violence against the Asian communities, and the most recent police brutalities and the trials that are happening, many students have voiced to me that in class, virtually, they're not feeling a sense of belonging because no one's bringing up the issues that are happening. And it's like business as usual, status quo, and that's hurtful, are the expressions that I've heard. Like, how can you not acknowledge this very real, it's impacting myself, my community, my being, everything, and you're just brushing past it and saying, on page 73, the quote is, and who can learn in that way? It's very, very difficult. And so if you had to ask, I couldn't say it in a word, because obviously I'm saying multiple sentences here, but bringing an authentic self, being able to bring an authentic self and reality to a situation, whether it's a virtual space or a personal space, I think acts as a sign of belonging.
And Carolyn, for staff, do you hear what, because I don't have control over what the faculty do in their classrooms, are there things that students are noticing that advisors or other staff are doing that they find helpful?
Yes, staff are reaching out to students to see if, just acknowledging like what's happening. Is there something I can do? Do you have a space to talk to, or like giving resources? Things like that have been very helpful for staff, from student feedback from what staff members have done.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the students on the panel yesterday said, just send an email to check in. And don't say don't. I don't expect you to respond. I'm just checking in with you. Just let me know that you're thinking about me. That I'm on your mind. Yeah. What about other folks?
To echo Carolyn, it's nice when we're in class, and of the classes I've taken, there's been one class that they acknowledge, like, okay, we know that there's something going on, so we want to take a couple minutes to acknowledge it. There was my first quarter where they were just like, the professor said, well, we know there's a lot going on, but we decided to hold class anyways. And to me, that kind of irritated my soul a little bit, because it's just like, who are you to decide what I should be feeling in this given moment? Like, at least acknowledge it. But there was no acknowledgement. And so just the simple act of acknowledging that things are not normal right now, things are not okay. And so that really makes students feel like, oh, okay, you actually care about me. I'm not just another number on your roster. And so that's good. But to answer the question of like belonging, to me, it's when I can connect to other people that I have common interests with, not just academic, where, being a BIPOC student, where being a mixed race student, being a queer student, to have all those little avenues. So that's why through Zoom, it's easy. But once I'm on campus, I'm hoping that there's, we can collaborate with other departments and other clubs and whatnot, so that there's more than just this kind of student. Because I know when it comes to CCDE, a lot of students think, oh, it's just for Black students, like I can't go there. And it's just like, if we form something more and collaborate with more groups and things, more students will be open and feel that sense of belonging. And so to me, it's like Carolyn said, be your authentic self, where you don't feel that you have to be one type of person in this area, one type of person where it's just like, because I'm that personality where it's like, you get this ball of crazy or you don't get it at all. So.
Yeah. And I think remembering that intersectional piece is really tremendous, is really, really tremendous. And I mean, the first part of what I just want to underscore, the first part of what you said as well, Lando, which is that we have to be, we can't be afraid of saying we're going to stop business as usual, right? And whether the business is in the business of the classroom or the business of the media or whatever it is, to say, I want to name the pain that's happening right now, and I want to give space for whatever we need to do to attend to that and to attend to you all as human beings right now. That's what we're talking about, this larger space of retention, right? That's part of us providing this holistic support for people, even if the business of the day is not going to get taken care of, the business of the day. Because, I mean, quite frankly, it's not going to happen for everyone in the classroom. I mean, that's what Lando was saying. Lando's out. Lando's already gone on that day right? As you know, the Breonna Taylor verdict is coming out, and faculty are choosing not to address that and to just continue on as business as usual, right? Half your class might be gone and experiencing something else. So what's happening in the moment when you are choosing silence, right? Yeah. Does anybody else want to respond to this piece on their definition of belonging? It might just be you, Laura, if there's anything you wanted to add. You good?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, terrific, terrific. We have some wonderful things that were happening in the chat. Maura was sharing out that even though staff can't control what faculty is doing in the classroom, that there is a certain power to influence, encourage, and discuss. And Heather is co-signing that and saying that staff organize an equity training for all faculty in her program, and that certainly impacts people. So why don't we go ahead and open this up to our audience here. If anyone has any questions around holistic support on these larger questions of retention, we can talk about, we've been talking a lot about our moment of our dual pandemics and the challenges in this moment right now. If you'd like to pose a question in the chat, if you'd like to raise your hand, we're here for it all.
I actually have a question for folks in the audience, if that's okay, Ralina.
Yes, please, Jay.
Since folks were sharing, and by the way, one of the favorite people that I love to collaborate with are graduate professional advisors, GPAs, graduate program advisors, because they're the frontline people that support all of our graduate students. So shout out to you all. And since Heather had shared what her department is doing, are there any other GPAs that would like to share things that they've done to contribute a sense of belonging for their students that maybe your peers would like to hear about, we'd like to learn about?
And look at, and Jay is modeling, kind of creating belonging here in our session. Yes, please, we'd love to highlight you. I know there have been all kinds of, as people have shared with Carolyn and myself, all kinds of creative things that individual units have been doing. GBAs, any GBAs? Sarah, please. Sarah Lenti, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for calling on me. I'm going to say that it's not something that I've done, but it's something that our students, we're a very small department, maybe 26 grad students total in the program. And they, along with our postdocs, have gotten together since last June and done like a twice a month, they have run with it. And we're medicinal chemistry, and so they're way on the science end of things, and they want to talk about data and about the data of inequity, and they want to talk about what research is going on. And they also have, anyway, this Friday they'll be talking about Stop Asian Hate, like that sort of influx of awful racism that's been happening. And it's also happening to our individual students. And so kind of given them a forum to talk with each other. And it's all been very student forward, like they've organized it, they've committed to it, and they've also created the space for it. And so basically I'm looking for tools to help support them in it and to be able to, and so I've, asking them, how can I help? Because I'm like a white, cis, heteronormative girl who is like, maybe I know how to do Excel and I know how to do computer, those sorts of things. What can I do to support? And I've asked and they've given me some direction on things, but I I need to do some of the more listening end of things. I guess that's, as a GPA right now, it's focusing on like listening. Sorry, I went on a long time, but
No, that was great, Sarah. And I think that one of the things that you're highlighting for us here, and we're hearing this from students, is the space of students are in a lot of units are creating their own spaces, and in some units this is being supported by staff and by faculty, and so they have some energy to continue doing these activities. And then in other spaces they feel like they are the ones solely being tasked with all of the race and equity activities of the entire unit. Right. And so I really appreciate you saying we're giving voice to students, it's student led, but I'm also thinking about how I can support them so that they are not going to be exhausted by these activities. And I think that that's the right balance that we're all trying to strike. Thank you. I see Cher's hand up here.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's so great to be here. So hi, I'm at the School of Nursing, and this year we've kind of done this whole anti-racism work group. So the whole school, like we're, really trying to just be equitable for everyone. But I'm part of kind of the student, gosh, I can't remember what my work group is called, but we've kind of designed, we started to do like kind of monthly meetings with BIPOC students, just really having a space. And I've really found in this time with, COVID and just everything that's gone on and, racism and all this stuff. I mean, it was just really important to just have this space where students could just speak. And some of them, we did caucuses, so there was different spaces, so students would feel, really empowered to be able to speak and not have to explain. And I felt that was just so, just having that just really helped students kind of like, okay. And, so I think like now I'm just like, well, let's just have a caucus for, this and that. And then with the, anti-Asian, crimes that have been happening, we felt like a lot of our staff who were, Asian American, myself, we were like, well, we don't really have, a way to talk. So then we were also feeling like, okay, well, we need to support our staff and faculty too. So we've kind of, I think we started with this, like we started one thing and we were just kind of, I feel for myself, I don't know if everyone feels this way, but it's kind of like a norm that we're just trying to do, like, it's okay. It's important to have these spaces. And so I've just felt like even me and myself, it's healing with, myself. And then I think also for students to feel like, okay, my faculty and staff, like, some of them get it, like, we're all human, right? So I think that was really great. And when Sarah was speaking, I was just thinking about that, if that was, something that your school could do. And so that's something we've been doing. And I think it's been really healing. I mean, I think we're a long way from everyone healing, but just having that space and just really wanting to do that and just kind of taking a gauge of like, we did at the end of spring quarter, I was just kind of feeling, I don't know, it's just kind of like feeling in the air, like, I feel like maybe students might want to come in. Let's just do a check-in. I mean, because we're like, oh, should we have like a format, and sometimes it's just nice to be like, hey, if you're feeling kind of, you just want to come in and just see some faces, come in, stop in, say hi. You don't have to, like, not really making it super formal, but then also like trying to embed things that are like, hey, we're going to have, a formal thing here. So I love GO-MAP and I love all the stuff you guys are doing. And I totally like taking all these notes and, bookmarking all the stuff that comes through and just getting ideas and, really, trying to tell my students about what you guys offer so we don't have to necessarily, reinvent the wheel, but then, also maybe do something within our school. So that's been really great. Just the space has been really nice for students. And I know it's on Zoom, but, it's nice just seeing their faces and giving that opportunity. So that's what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cheryl. You started by saying that the entire School of Nursing is, you said you're doing readings together. Is that what you said? So I want to make sure that, oh, you're muted there, Cher.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. We're doing like an anti-racism sort of, like initiative for the whole school. So we're looking at every, like a whole bunch of different sort of parts of our school and just really working on all of that. And so one of the work groups I'm doing is, you know, student retention, really, because it's, you know, just kind of looking at students and having a space and that kind of thing. And one thing that students have said is like, we've never had this. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to do a lot of stuff, you know, whatever we can do on Zoom, but I think just having that space and just making it kind of a part of what we do, like checking in with students to see like, hey, we know this came up, because I know that really just means something like, oh, okay. I think someone had said something, it's like, you know, a teacher had said, oh, this is happening, but we're going to do a class, but not really addressing it. It's like, well, you could have said like, hey, I know you guys are feeling whatever, but you know, we have to have class, but if you need to step out, I mean, just giving that kind of, you know, flexibility really means a lot to students, you know. So anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharon. And I think that knowing that the entire School of Nursing is engaged in this anti-racism work, right? And that faculty, staff, administrators, that everyone is invested. And then it also doesn't come out of nowhere that you're doing these affinity groups, right? That you're bringing people together in this particular way. You're doing these drop-ins. So we had a question in the last session, which was kind of like, well, how do you fix it? Carolyn and I get a lot of these questions like, just fix it. Just give me the formula. We just fix the racisms. And part of what we need to do is kind of what I'm hearing you say that the School of Nursing is doing is trying to do as much of a wraparound approach as possible, right? It's never about the singular like injection, right? It's right. I'm talking to someone in nursing. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm a media scholar, but something that is really like a whole kind of wraparound type of a treatment, right?
And I will say, you know, you need to get buy-in from leadership, right? Like, so I mean, it's not like, you know, someone came up with the idea and we're like, okay, we do, you know, there's all this planning and work groups. It's, you know, it's like not for the faint of heart, I'll have to say, but it's good work, you know, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of fatigue. Like after some of the meetings, I'm like, okay, I gotta, you know, I'm taking the rest of the day off. But I always tell myself, this is good work we're doing. And if it wasn't good work, I wouldn't be this tired. But, you know, you have to give yourself that self-care space too, right? So if you're doing this work,
I like that reframe. If it wasn't good work, I wouldn't be this tired.
I know, right?
Thank you, Chair.
It'd be easy, then it'd be all,
Yes,
so, thank you.
I hear it. Patricia, please tell me if I am losing stuff in the chat, but I see Michelle next with her hand up, please.
Hi, okay, I've been looking forward to this panel and it's been really nice to spend time with you all the last 2 days. And so going off of what you were just saying, Dr. Joseph, about the wraparound approach instead of just the injection, and also I think drawing on what Lando had mentioned about this awareness that the CCDE is centering Black graduate students. I'm curious for Dr. Jackson and Jaye, if you can share a little bit with GO-MAP and core programs, how you all are equitably approaching, and I guess from my perspective, what is equitable is centering Black students specifically in these groups of like URM graduate students or first gen students, how you all are doing that work, or what that looks like, or
Carolyn, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. Yeah, to respond to that, every year we ensure that there are Black graduate students who are part of our first gen graduate student advisory board. And that is one of the most concrete ways that we make sure that our first gen graduate student programming addresses the needs of first gen graduate students who identify as Black or African American.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Jay, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, because I just jumped right in there. And also recently there's been the Black Graduate Student Association formed, and we're trying to make sure, or GO-MAP and Ralina's office trying to make sure that we are listening to the members and the leadership, because that was recently formed. And also in general, making sure that we direct students, particularly if Black students come to us about belonging, that we make sure that they know about that group, about different affinity groups that are forming. Sometimes we get emails about departments or maybe particular areas like STEM, and then we try to make those connections with the OGs and then the Graduate Student Advisory Board. We don't have a lot of students in every discipline, but we have some things in general specific areas, and then we reach out to a key point or a contact person or group that can help with that need. And we're just really trying to also build communities across different units and stuff, so it's not all, so that GO-MAP can help, but those connections are also important so that they know that it's not just GO-MAP that cares and about the campus climate and the culture of what these students are experiencing.
And I think it's part of what I hear both Carolyn and Jaye saying is, first of all, listening to students, right? And working from student need, and also understanding that, and this is what I hear you saying, Michelle, that the needs of Black students are different. The needs of Black students are different from Native American Indigenous students. They're different from Asian American Pacific Islander students, are different from Latinx students. And so we need to also, as we are thinking about BIPOC students, we also have to think about individual histories, histories on this land, histories in the institution, right? Histories in people's own fields and what that's like, traversing their department and then going out into the field. And so we have to be really attentive to all of those dynamics. And also, as Lando was naming in a really important way, we have to think about it intersectionally, right? We have to think how race is operating. Jaye was naming first gen status, how people's gender, sexuality, disability, how all these things are really a part of the way in which we have to think about how are we supporting students. This is all a part of our holistic support, and not flattening any of that out as we're supporting students. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. That's a really important question. Thank you.
And I'll pop in, Ralina, with a few of the comments so they don't go under the radar. In our chat, some of you may have seen, we've got, going back to Jaye's question about what GPAs are doing, I'll share a few comments from the chat from, I believe it's Miriam Bartha. As a GPA under pandemic/remote conditions, I've created a weekly digest for each program and cohort, trying to collect the various emails and announcements of note regarding scholarships, policies, resources, events, office hours, words of support. That's so that they can connect to community resources, and also so I can stay present to them. And I appreciate that comment. In many ways, I too am a staff member. It's so helpful for us on the staff side to know what those resources for belonging even are ourselves. So those digests in a way are not only for our students, but for us. So I'm appreciating that comment, and I welcome additions on that. Miriam, if you wanted to say anything else, or I can go on to the next one.
Thank you. I don't need to add anything there. I just wanted to reply to Jaye.
Awesome, great, double checking.
And acknowledge what folks were saying. It's a moment where they need to connect, and we're all being deluged also, right? Overload.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that any of us, Miriam, know how to solve that problem right now. Outside of having patience with students as we're providing support, of understanding if people don't get to email, right? Of having relationships with people that you might text somebody, right? That you're easy on folks if they miss something. So thinking through these strategies, but yeah, right now it feels like there are a number of unwinnable situations as we attempt to make it through the next couple months. But this is wonderful. Having all these resources at hand is really wonderful. Thank you.
And there was another comment, Hitana, I'll also invite you to say more. I think this is an interesting comment for those of us who are white faculty and staff. There's a comment about a good place for white people to learn and do their work is in a white caucus. The School of Public Health has formed one. I welcome you saying more about that, or if there are other staff or faculty who want to speak to any white caucusing that you might be doing. I think I think thinking about how are white faculty and staff mobilizing in this moment to think about belonging is an important part of the conversation.
I'll just say that I've found it incredibly helpful. I've formed one on my own that I do with 2 people, and it's been really good for us in terms of our learning and also for us keeping each other accountable and for having really difficult conversations. So I think that with a white caucus, I think white people really have, I mean, so much of the work is white people talking to each other and holding each other accountable. And so what I found is that I'm really excited about the white caucuses forming at the UW, and I think it's important to do that work with our coworkers. I also think that there's also some deep personal work that has to happen, and I realized to do that I really couldn't do that in the workplace, and so that's why I formed a sort of a personal one with 2 personal friends who are also want to do that work, and so I think. And I'm happy to talk to people more about that. But for me, anti-racist whiteness has been a lifelong engagement. And so I've thought about it a lot, and I put some books into the chat as well that people might find useful. I mean, it's useful for anybody, but I think especially for those of us who are anti-racist whites and student advisors, they could be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And picking up on the comment around affinity grouping that you made and that Cher made as well. Carolyn and I did a session on affinity groups for an equity-focused office hours, and we can send out some of the literature that's around that talks a little bit about best practices and some of the research and data behind why do affinity groups, because there's some good literature there. Are there any other questions that people might be hitting? Speaking of Zoom fatigue, it's funny because we're doing this, and we're doing this on support. We did a session on wellness, and the irony of us doing this on making people stay on Zoom longer as we're thinking about supporting our wonderful graduate students and making them stay on the Zooms. Yes. Is there anybody else that has a question or a comment or that wants to share, or anyone on the panel around this question of holistic support, what you're doing, or how perhaps to provide it better? Heather.
One of the things I wanted to share really quickly. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jaye, and go Jaye, and then we'll call on Heather next.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Heather. I just wanted to say that I'm always learning and growing, and I'm just so grateful and humbled to be in collaboration with all of you amazing staff, graduate students, and faculty. And this is a process, and this takes work towards equity and social justice. So I just want to express a lot of thanks and gratitude for this work and in collaboration with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Patricia dropped in the chat, in particular some of the work that we had shared on whiteness and white affinity groupings. I see Heather and then Marie.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone is actually going to have an answer to this, but I just want to put it out there. Thinking about affinity groups, thinking about supporting students and Zoom fatigue and all of that, how do you ask your students, how can I help, without creating more of a burden for them by having to answer that question? And that's just something, like I said, I don't think there's an easy answer, but realizing that just by asking someone, how can I help, you're making them come up with a task for you. And that, like, I don't think it's an easy answer, but if anyone has thoughts to share on that kind of conundrum of wanting to be there, but without creating more of a burden for folks already burdened.
That's a really great question. I don't know if any of our students have answers, or Carolyn, I see you unmuted. Carolyn, you want to take it first, please?
It's like a game show, but not really. So sometimes I find, and this
You
is
won, Carolyn. You won.
You're all. But sometimes I find in those check-ins, if you say like, here are some resources that I think might be helpful, but if there's something else like within this that's not, feel free to reach out. And that gives students resources and connection, but also an opportunity to choose to reach out if there's something else that they need. And I feel that not perfectly, but it takes away some of that burden, because they might look through like, oh, I didn't know this particular resource existed or something like that. And you might meet the need, but then offering another type of connection should they need something else, I think could be helpful. But I would love to hear from the students as well on the panel.
As they're getting their statements together, I'll share with you all, after the week after George Floyd was murdered, we are the only Black family on our street in an area of the city that has been heavily gentrified. And we had two neighbors, it was very sweet, who one brought over donuts, and just happened to bring over donuts, and the other ones brought over chocolate chip cookies, and with like the sweetness, it's like, hey, just want to let you know we're thinking about you, and just left it. And I just thought it was the sweetest thing, as opposed to, it was very funny and talking to a lot of our Black friends, a lot of white folks that were kind of checking in and wanting to have like deep conversations. I'm like, no, my neighbors brought us sugar, and they're like, that is the best thing ever. Anyway, Laura, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so something that Carol mentioned was offering resources that are just available, and something that Dr. Joseph mentioned earlier was just something in Real Talk Tuesday. We just have like a counselor on standby, not on standby, but just like present, right? And not like offering specific like counseling advice, or like, saying, or doing in-depth counseling or anything like that, but just offering like a presence and a resource and a face, honestly, right? Like that's like the biggest thing, right? Like, because coming into UW and it's a huge institution, and sometimes like that largeness can be really intimidating and stuff. And so offering that like that presence and that face has been not just helpful for, I think, for like our attendees and stuff, but also helpful for me, right? Like after having interacted with that counselor and like hearing about the resources and stuff like that, like it just gave me another opportunity to like seek out different forms of support. And so I thought that was very personal. Very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And I like that image. He just hanging out. He just happens to be here for counseling services. He just hanging out. I think so much of it is around, if you have relationships with people already, it's easier for them to be like, this is what happened, Ralina, this thing happened, help me, right? Or for us to have relationships checking back in. If you have never checked in with somebody, then when stuff goes down, it's going to be super awkward. So this is also about just good interpersonal practices around like just checking in and being a human here. Marie, could we go to Marie's question here?
Yeah, thanks, Ralina. So my question is, we've been talking about how we as departments, as graduate advisors, can support our particular community of students. And I'm wondering how we can make this conversation bigger about the structural challenges within the University of Washington that make it actually really hard for students to feel like they belong. When we make statements about, oh, we care about equity, we care about supporting you, but then we have processes that say, well, oh, if you want to petition something, you need to document proof that a counselor says you have a medical condition that racism is bothering you. And to me, that is really frustrating because it has a lot of assumptions that our students have access to a counselor and can pay for those things, and that they can immediately then get that counselor, and they may not be a counselor of color, to address what that experience of racism is in a mental health condition so that they can justify a petition. Like, I think so much of what I'm finding right now is it's not just, oh, I want to create the community within my department, but that the university is making it constantly hard for students to feel like they can belong when there are so many barriers just to say, I don't want to pay $800 today for something because I was emotionally unwell to do it. So I guess, yeah, my question is more of what can we as departments collectively do to advocate on a larger scale for universal belonging of our students in a system that continues to make it difficult for them to belong?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Marie. I mean, I think that this is the problem that I'm working on in my office, right? And that have shifted the entire focus of what it was previously to try and deal precisely with this, so that we're not doing singular one-off approaches, that we're thinking structurally, and part of it is making sure that people know, that everyone, that as many people as possible know about what you are sharing. Because there are so many, the way in which, you all know this, the way in which inequality happens is through through hegemony, right? It's everywhere, and it's through so many different forces. And we're trying to, Carolyn and myself and all of our partners in the graduate school, we are trying to attack all the pieces that we know, but there are so many things that slip through. So please tell us, please share, please tell as many people as possible, please document things. For example, there are things that slip through. There was some language that we just finally sussed out that recommenders could choose in this area of mental health, could choose to evaluate students on the basis of their emotional maturity. And we had no idea that departments were able to actually select that as one of their criteria for recommenders to judge on, right? And there's all kinds of ways in which that's incredibly problematic, right? It's incredibly gendered, right? There's all kinds of things there. We didn't know. And so we didn't know, in fact, until there was an outside recommender who came back to us and said, hey, this doesn't seem right. And we took it on right away. So please let us know so that we can try and partner together to try and bring all of this to the light and try and create that whole systems approach to eradicate inequality. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what our dean, this is what Dean Joy is trying to do. This is what GO-MAP with Carolyn's leadership is trying to do. So we look forward to partnering with you on all of this. Because I didn't know about that. Yeah, thank you. So we have like a minute left, and we could talk to the end, or we could just leave a minute left. And I want to direct you all to I don't know if you all were at our equity, our wellness is an equity issue yesterday, but our wonderful graduate student, Caleb from the College of Education and UW's Resilience Lab directed everyone to go outside for a couple of minutes. So if you're able to do that, please do that. If you're able to join us back at 4, we would love that. And if not, our feelings will not be hurt. Take care of yourselves. We will be joining each other. If you come back at 4 in breakout rooms, you're going to have the opportunity to join a breakout room that correlates with one of these topics. So we will see you back again, possibly. If not, if it's your last session, thank you so much for joining us. Fill out our survey. You'll get more information, including follow up with all of the resources that Patrizia and others were sharing out in the chat. Thank you so much to our panelists, our wonderful panelists. Big hand of applause. And I'm going to go out to the sun for a minute and see you all back in 15. Bye-bye.